A fierce gunfight breaks out in the Badiat al-Sham desert. A U.S. aid van, disguised as a humanitarian mission, is under heavy fire from two militant vehicles. But this is no ordinary aid team. They're part of a covert operation codenamed Alice 116, targeting terrorists in the region. As the militants prepare to launch rockets, a single soldier in the van takes control of the situation. This soldier is Parker, a Green Beret with the U.S. Army Special Forces. Her calm under fire is nothing short of remarkable. She returns fire with deadly precision, even as the van crashes into the sand. Despite the chaos, Parker remains unshaken. She takes down two terrorists with quick, decisive action. It's a close call, but she survives and signals to her team that the area is secure. Parker's skills are undeniable, but there's more to her than just being a soldier. She despises unnecessary violence. She stops her commanding officer from executing Syrian informants. This moral stance sets her apart where bloodshed often feels like the only solution. Parker's close friend and colleague, Spider, voices his concern. He's a hacker, and he's worried. The general doesn't seem to be a fan of Parker, and in their line of work, that's a dangerous position to be in. But before the conversation can go any deeper, Parker's phone rings. It's been ringing for a while, but now she can finally answer. The caller is Jesse Swan, the sheriff of Creation, the small town where Parker grew up. He's not just a sheriff, he's also Parker's prom date from years ago, and they once shared more than just a friendship. But this isn't a social call. Jesse brings bad news. Parker's father, Harry, had a habit of exploring an old mine near their home. It was a common thing for him, almost a daily ritual. But this time, things went terribly wrong. The mine collapsed, and Harry was found dead amidst the rubble. The weight of the news hits Parker hard, adding a personal loss to the professional chaos she's already dealing with. Parker's world fell apart when she got the call. Her father was gone, crushed by a cave-in at his beloved mine. She didn't waste any time. She took a break from her professional life and returned to Creation. As soon as she arrived, a familiar face surrounded her. Mikey, her childhood friend who also worked at the mine. He knew her father well. He had been by her father's side for years, but nothing could ease the pain Parker felt. She drowned her sorrow in alcohol, with Mikey at her side. During one of their conversations, Mikey let slip that he was the one who had found her father's body in the mine. The news hit her like a ton of bricks. How could Mikey, of all people, have been the one to find him? The image of her father, alone and crushed by the rocks, haunted her. Then there was Elvis, the brash son of Senator Ezekiel Swan, a local politician. Elvis had always been trouble, and Parker had never liked him. But now, back in Creation, she couldn't avoid him. He seemed too eager to talk about her father's death, almost like he knew something more. Parker didn't plan on staying in Creation for long. She intended to return to her work after the funeral, to escape the painful memories. But something kept nagging at her. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that her father's death didn't add up. The cave-in seemed too convenient, too perfect. Her father had spent countless hours in that cave, meticulously working on something he had never shared with her. The cave was his sanctuary, his life's work. But when Parker saw the rocks and debris that supposedly killed him, she felt a chill run down her spine. The scene didn't look like an accident. It looked staged. Questions swirled in her mind. Why was her father in the cave that day? What had he been working on? Parker couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story, something hidden beneath the surface. Determined to uncover the truth, Parker knew she couldn't leave Creation just yet. She owed it to her father to find out what really happened. The town held secrets, and Parker was going to unearth them, no matter what it took. Her father's death wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a mystery waiting to be solved. And Parker was the only one who could piece it all together. As Parker was leaving the mine, she threw a grenade at some nearby rocks. To her surprise, the rocks ended up in a shape similar to the mine's entrance. This odd coincidence sparked a troubling thought. Was this a setup for an assassination? But with no solid proof, she set it aside for the moment. Later that evening, after a few drinks, Parker noticed a group of young men in a van that looked like it was stolen. Their behavior was suspicious, and Parker, always needing to prove she was the toughest around, decided to chase them down with Mikey. The pursuit led them to a store where the young men began looting, but their petty crime spree was cut short when Parker's knife found its mark. The thieves didn't stand a chance against her, and their greed was paid for in blood. The next day, Parker spotted Elvis and a few others in the mountains, practicing with high-caliber weapons. Something about this scene didn't sit right with her. She knew her father's shelter had a stash of army-grade weapons, and the pieces started to come together. Could Elvis be involved? She needed proof. Parker called in a favor from Spider, a soldier with a knack for hacking. Together, they retrieved a camera from the cave. What they found was exactly what Parker feared. Recordings of Elvis, caught red-handed. Determined to get more answers, Parker visited Mike's mother. She hoped to find something, anything that could tie Elvis to the weapons dealing. Mike's mother couldn't offer much, but she did mention that Elvis had tried to sell rifles to one of Mike's friends. It was a small lead, but it confirmed Parker's suspicions. Elvis was dealing army weapons. Parker wasn't one to let things go easily. She spent the next few days tailing Elvis and his friends, piecing together their operation. As she dug deeper, she discovered that Mike was not only dealing weapons, but was deeply entangled in a much larger scheme. In a twist of fate, Elvis is connected with Parker's ex, Jessie. When Jessie and Parker meet at the police station after her return, the sheriff hands her a letter that shakes her to the core. The letter, written by her father, Harry, had been found on his work table at home. There's something unsettling about it, something that feels like a final goodbye. Jessie can't help but wonder if Harry had written it, knowing he wouldn't be around much longer. Could he have taken his own life? Harry had been losing his memory, and his once sharp mind was fading. It's a sad thought, but Jessie can't shake the possibility that Harry might have walked into the mine cave he frequented and caused an explosion to end his life. But Parker isn't convinced. She knew her father well, and the idea of him giving up like that doesn't sit right with her. Harry wasn't just anyone. He was a former Green Beret, a man who faced danger head-on without flinching. He wasn't the kind to be scared or intimidated, even by old age. Parker thinks back to the letters she used to exchange with her father. They would often write to each other about how much they missed one another. Parker can't accept it. She refuses to believe that her father would take his own life, no matter how much his mind had deteriorated. The man she knew was strong, resilient, and full of life, even in his later years. And yet, the grief she feels is overwhelming. She has to carry the weight of her loss alone, with no clear answers about what really happened. As Parker holds the letter in her hands, she's caught between two worlds. One where her father was a victim of his own mind, and another where he was simply a man who missed his daughter. On the other hand, Parker meets Jessie and Elvis's father, Senator Ezekiel Swan, a man who was running for senator, who seemed decent enough on the surface. But in Parker's world, appearances were often deceiving. The connections were too convenient, too perfect. Was this senator to be part of the same deadly game? The next day, Senator Swan tried to pull her into his political game. He needed her to win over the Latino community, but she wasn't buying it. Her instincts screamed that he was using her, and she was right. Just then, a tip came in. Elvis, the thug tied to her father's death, was at the mine. She didn't hesitate. She had to act fast. When she arrived at the mine, she saw them, those men who had taken so much from her, pulling weapons from her father's cave. Her heart raced as she flattened the tire of her car, a small act of sabotage that might buy her some time. Then, out of the shadows, Elvis appeared, knife in hand, threat in his eyes. But she wasn't scared. With a burst of adrenaline, she threw him to the ground, the knife clattering away. Just when she thought she had the upper hand, things took a dark turn. His henchmen were one step ahead. Flames engulfed her house, turning it into a fiery trap. The fight that followed was brutal, intense, and desperate. She fought with everything she had, and as the fire roared around her, she managed to take down one of the thugs, leaving him to burn. But the victory was short-lived. As she stumbled out of the wreckage, smoke and ash swirling around her, she saw Elvis again. His car was useless. The tire she had punctured is now a twisted mess. She didn't hesitate. She hit him hard. But before she could deliver the final blow, his brother Jesse showed up. And with the cruel twist of fate, she was the one who ended up in handcuffs, dragged to the police station. The truth was out there, but it came with a price. She was no closer to answers, only deeper in a game where the stakes were life and death. The fight was far from over. Elvis and Jesse had always been close, but that night, everything changed. Jesse confessed that some criminals had approached him with a tantalizing offer, millions of dollars in exchange for his father's weapons. The temptation was strong, but there was a catch. The criminals wanted Parker to betray her father's memory. Jesse, swayed by the promise of easy money, tried to convince her to take a piece of the pie. But Parker wasn't one to compromise her principles. She refused flatly, knowing that this was more than just about money. It was about honor. Realizing the stakes, Parker made a critical decision. Before things spiraled further, she called her lawyer, seeking legal advice and protection. The lawyer, sharp and relentless, interrogated Jesse, pressing him on what he knew about Elvis and his father's work. Jesse, however, played dumb, denying any knowledge. But the lawyer wasn't easily fooled. Later that night, driven by suspicion, he decided to check out the cave himself. What he found there would cost him his life. Jesse, desperate and cornered, caught him snooping and made sure he wouldn't talk, by sending him to sleep. Now, Parker was in real trouble. The evil family, ruthless and determined, had her tied up. They beat her, trying to force her to spill what she had seen on the videos. But Parker was tough. She refused to give in. Things took a dark turn when the senator pulled a gun on her, leaving her with no choice but to call Spider. After that, Parker managed to free herself from her handcuffs and turn the tables, giving Elvis and the senator a brutal fight. Meanwhile, Jesse, torn by guilt and loyalty, couldn't bring himself to shoot his former partner. Instead, he turned himself in, surrendering to the weight of his choices. Parker, seizing the chaos, made a daring escape in a squad car. Jesse, alone and reflecting on his betrayal, found his phone and saw his last conversation with Spider. He impersonated Parker, sending a message that everything was fine, misleading any would-be rescuers. Elvis, frantic and enraged, started searching for Parker. His first stop was Mikey's house, but Mikey denied seeing her. Elvis and his crew ransacked the place, desperate to find any trace of her. What they didn't know was that Mikey had hidden Parker behind a secret door, keeping her safe while she recovered. After 3 long days, Parker woke up, determined to take control of her fate. She knew the battle wasn't over. Visiting neighbors who were fond of her, Parker began gathering weapons and ammunition. She was preparing for war, ready to confront the thugs who had turned her life upside down. The stage was set for a showdown, and Parker was armed and ready to fight back. Parker knew the risks, but revenge had taken over her every thought. Mike tried to warn her that Senator Swan's mansion was now a den for criminals, but Parker couldn't care less. She was focused on one thing: getting answers about her father's death. When Parker stepped into the mansion, she found Senator Swan alone in his office. He swore, just like before, that he had nothing to do with her father's demise. This time, though, Parker wasn't buying it. She pushed him hard, forcing a confession out of him. It turned out her father had stumbled upon something big. Elvis, one of the Swan brothers, was using a tunnel for his dirty business. With this new information, Parker decided to confront the senator. Her weapon of choice? A grenade. But as she was about to strike, Swan pulled a gun and shot her in the back. The grenade's pin slipped from her hand, leading to a deadly explosion. Yet, Parker wasn't done. The battle shifted to a cave where criminals had hidden the stolen military weapons. As Parker prepared for the next round, Spider, an unexpected ally, arrived just in time. The criminals played innocent, but it was a setup to kill Spider. However, Parker, always a step ahead, set off explosives that distracted the bandits, giving Spider a chance to fight back. The situation escalated quickly. The criminals captured Spider, dragging him into the cave to squeeze information out of him. But Parker wasn't far behind. She burst in, guns blazing, and they fought side by side. As they tried to escape, Spider suddenly stopped, allowing Parker to keep running while he held off the bad guys. A grenade went off, causing part of the cave to collapse on him. After dealing with the criminals, Parker realized the real threat was still out there: Elvis Swan. She found him and ended his reign of terror with a machete. But in the chaos, she hadn't noticed that Spider was missing. Panic set in as the townspeople helped her search through the rubble. They finally found him, alive but barely hanging on. In the final showdown, Parker reached the area where the weapons were stashed. Pretending to be wounded, she tricked the military guards. Her real target was Jesse, the man who had betrayed her trust and love. As they faced off, Jesse pulled a grenade, ready to end it all. Parker tried to reason with him, but Jesse was too far gone. He set off the grenade, pushing Parker away to save her in his final act of redemption. With the dust settled, Parker learned that Spider would recover. As they reminisced about their wild adventure, Spider shared something special with her: a video he found among her father's things. It was a collection of moments from Parker's childhood, recorded by her old man. The video stirred something deep within her, igniting a fire for more adventures to come.